to 5225, 52 Weeks of Loving Movies, week 20. This week, we're talking about superheroes. Summer movie season has started, and although there are no superhero movies no new superhero movies in the theater this week, I decided to, apparently, because I don't remember all of my decision making when making the list, go with this because it's the beginning of the summer movie season. So I have always been a really big superhero guy. Growing up, I read comics. My cousins were really into superheroes, specifically my cousin Miles was really into comic books when I was growing up. And a lot of kind of my personality back then was almost emulated after him. So things that he was into, I thought was cool. And so I would kind of start being into them. And comic books is one of them. And so it was... growing up in the 80s and 90s, it wasn't nearly as cool as it became later in my life, which we'll talk about that a little bit with one of these movies. But let's cut the chit chat here and go straight to the first movie that I watched, which was Birds of Prey and the Fantabulous Emancipation of one Harley Quinn. The heroes in question in this movie were Harley Quinn, occasionally, Black Canary, Huntress, Renee Montoya, who would one day in the comics anyway become the Question, Cassandra Cain, who would one day in the comics become Batgirl. So this is a movie that I really liked on first watch. I saw this one in the theater. I was super excited because Harley Quinn, or Margot Robbie as Harley Quinn, is one of the few characters that is perfectly handled by the DCEU. I have a lot to say about the DCEU. I only watched two of them, and they're two of the really good ones. So for this thing, but I'm not going to talk much about the DCEU here, but she is one of the few characters that were handled pretty perfectly, despite the fact that in the first Suicide Squad movie, maybe she was a little mishandled, but the characterization and the way that Margot Robbie plays her is pitch perfect. I absolutely love it. So I really wanted to go back and revisit this movie because I really liked it in the theater. I kind of love it now. Like I liked it even more on rewatch, and I've seen it a couple times, but that was back when it first came out. And so this is the first time I visited it basically since it came out on home video. I watched it once or twice, and then I haven't seen it since then. So revisiting it now, I love it even more than I did when I first watched it. One thing that I really love in film in general, which I've talked about on this channel a few times, is unreliable narrators or characters narrating their own thing or their own stories and kind of bucking traditions of narration, kind of irreverent, if informal, that kind of thing, which happens in this movie. Harley Quinn is narrating it, and while most of what she says is considered to be accurate, she does, still fall into that unreliable narrator trope, which I really, really dig. I think a lot of the visuals in this movie are really, really cool. The fight scenes, a lot of them are extremely well staged and well handled. I like the way that they kind of jumps back and forth through time, and again, that's down to the fact that this crazy person is narrating and telling the story. It's a movie that I really dig start to finish, and I don't know what it was about this particular viewing that bumped it up for me, but it really did. And when it came out, there was a lot of people who really liked it, and there were some people who didn't. It was kind of mixed on that. I have one friend who's like who summed it up. He was like, so it's just 2 hours of waiting for a girl to shit. And it's like, that's very reductive to me. And I told him this, like, it's very reductive to me. And because you could really drill down any classic movie down to that. Indiana Jones and the Last Crusade is just 2 hours of a guy trying to find a cup to get a drink, like You can drill down anything to its basic parts, and it can sound dull or silly, but it's all about the journey and the story that's being told and how it's being told. And I think the way this movie was being told was really brilliant and really, really great. My friend Carly absolutely loves this movie. You've seen Carly on this channel a few times. If you're a regular viewer, she's incredible, but she absolutely loves this movie, and she is the one who recommended it. And I was like, hey, I love Carly. Carly loves this movie. It's time for a small Carly love tour, which also led me to the second movie that I watched for this, which was another one that she said, hey, you should watch this because she loves it, and that is The Suicide Squad, my second stop on the Carly love tour. Heroes in this one are Harley Quinn again, Bloodsport, Peacemaker, Ratcatcher 2, Polka-Dot Man, King Shark, and Milton. Milton is a really funny gag in this. Harley Quinn not knowing who he is, and then being like, "Oh, Milton," and then later calling, I think it's Peacemaker Milton, or no, not Peacemaker, Bloodsport, calling him Milton. It's a funny gag running throughout this movie. But this is another one that I actually loved when it came out. This is one of those in the pandemic times when it was released basically simultaneously in theaters and on streaming. I did see it the first time in the theater. And then when I got home, not immediately, but later, I was, I have some depression issues, and I was dealing with a little bout of depression, and turned this movie on because it made me happy, and I wanted to feel happy, and guess what? It worked. Well, it didn't cure me of anything, but it made me feel happy for that couple hours, and that's what my desperately needed at the time. So this movie it was kind of a little savior for me. This is not the only James Gunn movie I'll be talking about here, but I had vastly different reactions to the James Gunn movies I watched this time. I love James Gunn. He has made some movies that I absolutely love with all my heart. He's made some that were kind of misses for me. His superhero movies, for the most part, are great. He has a real knack for the superhero stuff. I'm sure that's why he's the current CEO of DC Studios. And I'm extremely excited for his new movie that's going to be coming out soon, his Superman movie, because I think he has a real knack for this, as I mentioned. Guardians of the Galaxy 2 is one that a lot of people really like. It did not work for me originally on my original watch, and I will say I didn't watch any MCU movies. I didn't watch any Marvel movies because that's very popular. I've seen all those so many times. I didn't feel like I really had a lot to say that hadn't been said about most of those movies, so I kind of eliminated them and kind of went with some stuff that was either lesser known or that I might have a lot to say about it. And I know what some of you might be thinking. The next set of movies that I'm going to talk about here in a minute are extremely popular, and they are, but they also have a place really, really close to my heart. So anyway, back to this and James Gunn. But as I was saying about Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 2, it didn't really work for me originally. It still is not among my favorites. I will say that it grows on me every time I do watch it. But let's talk about Suicide Squad, because this movie was a complete shock to a lot of people. I mean, if you like James Gunn, it wasn't a big shock that it was good, or that the film worked. The shock was kind of from the fact that we already had a Suicide Squad movie. It was not good. The DCEU was struggling, to say the least. There are some good movies in there. There's also a lot of really bad movies in there. And as a massive DC guy, I grew up reading DC Comics. It was my chosen publisher when I was growing up. And as an adult, still read DC Comics a lot. And I, as a massive fan of all that, pretty disappointed with a lot of what the DCU had offered us, because I think that it doesn't really understand it didn't, because it's kind of gone by the wayside, although some of the characters are still going to be involved. I don't think it understands their characters, and I think that comes down to the person who is helming it, which is Zack Snyder, choosing to work in his own out-of-the-box thinking about what he thinks a superhero should be versus who they are on page, or what they should look like on screen. And that's a big beef that I have with the DCEU, is just a lot of the characterization. But so this was kind of really great and really a shock when it comes to the characterization of these characters is all mostly very, very good. And even places where it deviates from what's on page, which it does a lot, sure. It still felt very true. It didn't feel like anybody was trying to change the characters or grit them up, make them feel relevant or anything like that. It felt like a great story was told with these malleable characters who could be the heroes. These characters are chosen because they are characters who can be the hero, even though most of them, really all of them, are villains. And I love the characterization in this movie. I love the way that each of these characters are used. Small spoiler for Suicide Squad. The Suicide Squad. So if you've never seen it, skip a couple seconds. But just real quick, one of the greatest moments in superhero films at large is Polka-Dot Man. I'm a motherfucking super, and then no more line there. It's simultaneously the funniest, saddest, most shocking, heartening, and encouraging moment in this film or any superhero film. It's a beautiful moment that I think is built up so well. That moment pays off every moment that he has experienced in this movie so far. And it's just storytelling at its finest. I think it's wonderful. And sends you on this roller coaster of emotions. You feel all these things all at the same time. So anyway, I really love this movie. After ending this, I decided to go, or after I finished Suicide Squad, I decided to go rewatch Peacemaker. I'm not finished with it yet. It's not part of this technically, but I will say that show also extremely well crafted, extremely well done, very, very funny, and has one of the greatest opening credit sequences of all time. I'm a connoisseur of great opening theme, series opening themes. We actually have a no skip rule in my house where we don't skip intros, which I know everybody tells me that's weird. I don't care. I love intros. And so just to kind of give you an idea of how seriously I take something like that, the fact that Peacemaker has one of the greatest intros of all time tells you how much I really, really love that. But I am going to move on from the Suicide Squad. If you've never seen it, please go watch it. If you haven't seen it because the first Suicide Squad movie didn't work for you, ignore that. It doesn't matter. That movie does not have any bearing on this movie. You can watch this without having seen any other DCEU movies, and it still works. If you've never seen it, go watch it. It's very, very good. And then watch Peacemaker, because it's a series on HBO Max, which is also very, very good. All right. Moving on from the Suicide Squad onto the one that I had mentioned earlier, is very well known, and it is very well known. But it is a trilogy based on my favorite fictional character of all time, which is Batman. And these movies are the Dark Knight trilogy. The heroes in this one are Batman / Bruce Wayne, Alfred Pennyworth, Jim Gordon, Harvey Dent, Lucius Fox, Selena Kyle / Catwoman, and John Blake. I could go on about this one for a very long time, or these three movies for a very long time. I don't think I'm going to split them up and talk about each one individually, although I might talk about specifics of them. But I am going to try to make this part fairly quick because, again, I could talk about this forever. And I'm sure I will talk about it again soon on this channel or another. But let me just say that we start out. Okay, I said I wasn't going to break them down, but let me just start out with some Batman Begins here. I showed the first two to my 13-year-old and 10-year-old sons. They're about to be 11 and 14 next month. But I showed it to them for the first time. Actually, my 13-year-old had seen Batman Begins, but he hadn't seen The Dark Knight. So I showed it to them, those two to them for the first time. We will be watching Dark Knight Rises together soon. I needed to watch it before they were able to watch it with me, so they didn't get to complete the trilogy this time with me. But they had a really great time. My 10-year-old is a little bit is a very empathetic child, and was very distressed by a lot of the stuff that happens in it, but he still very much enjoyed his time. It's just there's a lot of tension that was really having its way with his nerves. But Batman Begins was, at the time of its release and remains to this day, the best origin story in any superhero movie. And that comes down to the creative team behind it. I mean, Christopher Nolan wasn't looking to make a superhero movie. He was looking to make a movie. And I think that's the correct approach sometimes. A lot of the time that can be the correct approach. And in this case, it was the correct approach. I think that if you just want to make a great movie while still honoring the characters, I think that is the absolute correct approach to making a superhero movie. And that was his goal. He wanted to make a great movie. It just happened to also be a Batman movie. And I think that he told the audience a well-known story in a way that did not make it feel like it was retreading a bunch of things that we had already seen or heard. It made it feel fresh and new, and told us everything we need to know, and built up to the superhero moment so well that it didn't feel like it came out of nowhere. And it also didn't feel like it was too late. You know, sometimes these origin movies, you don't get the superhero part until way late, and sometimes that can feel very late. It does not feel too late. It doesn't feel too early. It feels so well paced. This movie is so well paced that I'm not sure that an origin story will ever beat this. I don't think we're ever going to get an origin story as good or better than Batman Begins. So we go from the best origin story in any superhero movie to the best superhero movie, bar none. And yes, that is my opinion. I think it's one that's held by a lot of people, but I don't, what other people think of it it doesn't really affect how I feel about it. But how I happen to feel about it is this is the best superhero movie ever made. It is the reason that the Oscars went from 5 to 10 nominees, because there was such an outcry that this movie should have been nominated and maybe should have won Best Picture, that they changed the rules, sadly too late for The Dark Knight, that they had changed the rule to make sure that something like this didn't happen again. Of course, these things always happen, and they will always happen, where a film that a lot of people feel should have been in the conversation wasn't. That's always going to happen, but the change in rules makes that less likely to happen. This came out in 2008. See, I said I wasn't going to break these down by movie, but I absolutely am. So just forget what earlier Matt said. This movie came out in 2008, which is the year the MCU started. Iron Man and Hulk, Incredible Hulk came out that year, and I think that it's very interesting because the MCU is almost counter programming to the Dark Knight trilogy, because while it's, it's great, it's also very dark and gritty. And while the MCU can get dark, for the most part, it's bright and funny and happy, and it gets dark and it gets tense, and that doesn't take anything away from it. I just think that that the MCU is a different approach to superheroes, and I think both are completely, absolutely needed in the superhero landscape. So I just think it's very interesting that those came out at the same time. I also think this is just a little anecdote I remember. I never thought Robert Downey Jr. would ever work with Christopher Nolan, because when Iron Man came out and Dark Knight was out, and I remember Robert Downey Jr. Kind of bashing the Dark Knight, being like, "Come see Iron Man. You don't need a PhD to watch Iron Man," and kind of making fun of how artsy the Dark Knight was, and how serious and smart the Dark Knight was. I thought that was funny. So when he was cast in Oppenheimer, I was completely shocked. I was like, "Oh wow!" So maybe I remember that, and I think that it's a thing, but those two, it's nothing to them. And that's really how popular culture works. The people involved in making those headlines and that art and that culture aren't necessarily a part of it the way that the consumer is. So it's very, very interesting. Dark Knight is, as I said, incredible. It is my favorite superhero movie. It features one of the greatest performances of all time, not just in a superhero movie, but in film at large, in Heath Ledger's Joker. I love Heath Ledger. He's one of my all-time favorite actors. I know that because he did win the Oscar for this role, but it was posthumously. He did pass away before that happened, and I know that there's a lot of people who feel like he only won because he had passed away. I will put down right now that if we go to the alternate universe where he doesn't pass away, he still wins that Oscar. I think that he would have won because it was the best supporting performance of the year. It is one of the greatest performances of all time. So I just want to put that out there, that I don't think that that's true, that he only won because he passed away. We all expected that to happen with Chadwick Boseman, and obviously so did Soderbergh, who was producing the Oscars that week, putting Best Actor at the end, letting that Oscars go down, like end on this really deflated, flat moment where the actor that we thought was going to win didn't win, and the actor who did win was not there. So that was awesome and really awkward and weird and just kind of frustrating. I think that people who say that are trying to be edgy. They're trying to have a new idea that's not very new. That was an idea back then, but they're trying to have something new to say on the internet, which happens a lot. These great movies are reevaluated all the time. I think a few years ago, people were reevaluating The Dark Knight. Like, is it really the great and the best? And I think that for the most part, people still agree. I think there's your naysayers out there, but I think there's a lot of people who will go on the internet to have a thought that challenges other people, even if they don't believe it, or just as bait to get people to engage with them. Lastly, here for this trilogy, I'm going to talk about Dark Knight Rises. This film had the unfortunate task of being the sequel to a masterpiece. I think that is what has caused it to be judged more harshly than I think it should be. I think it's a really great film. I think that it is a noticeable step down from the movie before it, but everything was always going to be a step down from the thing before it. Because we were never going to match The Dark Knight with anything. So I get why people might judge it more harshly and might see it as a lesser film than I think it deserves. I do get that, because there was an expectation and it was never going to meet that, and that is unfortunate. Even for me, when I left the theater, I thought it was great, but I also had a feeling like that's not quite what I wanted. I think every time I've watched it since then, I've realized that that was just an expectation thing. And I don't typically let expectations get the better of me. I like to judge each movie for itself, but sometimes that's impossible to overlook those expectations. You can't help how you feel about a thing when it happens. And that's why I think sometimes reinvestigating these movies, rewatching them, kind of giving them their due is important. I think that I think movies are owed that, because I think that sometimes our first viewing of it doesn't give us everything we need to fully understand it or fully engage with it the way that it deserves. I will say that there are things that still kind of bug me about it. Those don't make it not a great movie. Most of that stems from the timeline of the trilogy itself, which is that Bruce Wayne was Batman for 2 years and then just hung up the boots, hung up the cape, and retired for 8 years before coming back. That bugs me a little bit as a Batman fan. As I mentioned, Batman is my favorite fictional character, my favorite character. He is very, very important to me. So depictions of him are kind of sacred to me. And I think that the character is very well depicted, even though he's not the genius that we kind of see in the comics. He's not the same kind of detective that he is in the comics. We do get to see some detective work, but I think that it's hard to balance everything that Batman is in a film or a film series. I think the Batman gets a lot of what he is right, because there's a lot more of the detective side of it. But it also kind of it sacrifices some of the other stuff that is integral to who Batman is. So I think it's hard to get all of it at once. I think that if a film is doing their best job to be true to this character, then I'm on board. I'm okay with it. So this movie, despite the little issues I have with it, despite how I felt on initial viewing, I think it's a great movie. I think it's very good. If you have kind of wrote it off the way that a lot of people did, haven't revisited it, haven't gotten past Dark Knight when you're doing your rewatch, I recommend watching it again, seeing how you feel. Anne Hathaway is great as Selena Kyle and Catwoman. Just look at the way she moves. She moves like Catwoman should move. The attitude that Anne Hathaway portrays in this character is very, very true to who the character is. I think that she is this was a really great casting. I think that people may have been lower on it at the time, because she had kind of fallen out of favor for stupid reasons. And I mentioned that during my Les Mis review on this show, that I think that people were very unfair to her. And I think that the internet just needs something to hate sometimes. I didn't mean for my Dark Knight Trilogy review to be an indictment on the internet, but hey, it is what it is. I think she's very good. I think that Tom Hardy, his interpretation of Bane is unlike anything we've ever seen. It's much better than the Batman and Robin interpretation, because that was just a big dumb muscle guy, and Bane is a very, very smart tactician, very, very smart military minded villain, weapons expert, and to kind of dilute him down to this just big stupid guy is a big disservice to the character. So I think that this is way closer, even if it is a lot. There are a lot of liberties taken to kind of the character itself. I think that it's pretty cool to see at least a smart Bane on screen. I think that if it had been a guy in a wrestling mask, I think that people probably would have thought it was silly. So I think they did the best they could to make it feel grounded. But I'm going to move on from the Dark Knight trilogy. As much as I would love to just talk for hours about that series, I'm going to move on to the next one, which is Unbreakable. Our hero there is David Dunn / The Overseer. This movie is the one I alluded to it earlier. This is before this movie came out before the superhero boom, before we were really into superheroes as a community, as a film, the world, as film goers. There were some that had come out. We had the Batman movies, the Superman movies. There were occasional superhero movies that we would see. This is the same year that X-Men came out as well. But the world wasn't as well versed in superhero movies as it is now. And for a guy who grew up loving superheroes and reading superhero comics and watching superhero cartoons and watching all those superhero movies, this movie felt like a love letter to me, because it not only was a superhero movie, but it kind of broke down what makes a superhero and what makes a supervillain and how those things work in the comics. And it was almost a primer for the world to say, this is what you need to understand about these things. Now go and enjoy the superhero movies. For a long time, this was my favorite M. Night Shyamalan movie. I would have to rewatch them and do a ranking again. I think The Sixth Sense still beats it out. Maybe Signs. I like both of those a whole lot, but it's still way up there, and it's still one that I absolutely adore. And again, it's because of that kind of the way it treats the superheroes in comics with such reverence, and puts this thing that I've always loved in front of the rest of the world and says, look, understand this. And I think that this movie can be credited for comic books being cool. I mean, I know a lot of the movies that came out after that made comic books a lot cooler, but I think that this movie is the start. I think this is the movie where it starts being more socially acceptable to be a comic book nerd. And I will always thank this movie for that. If you've never seen it, go watch it. It's very well made. I mean, it does, some of it feels a little dated, not in a cancelable way or anything like that, but there is a little, occasionally while watching it, I'm like, because we live in an era so saturated with superheroes, some of it can feel, if you've never seen it, like, well, I know all of this, but it's a very well written, well structured movie. One of M. Night Shyamalan's best. I highly recommend it if you've never seen it. Go watch it. But I'm going to move on to my next movie. I'm not going to spend very much time on this, but that movie is Super, directed by James Gunn, who also directed The Suicide Squad and Peacemaker. The heroes here are the Crimson Bolt and Bolty. I'm going to be very, very brief with this, because I just have to say I did not care for this movie much at all. This was my one first-time watch. And I loved Slither. I remember when that movie came out, watched it like 4 times in a matter of 2 weeks. Like, I loved that movie. And I was excited when this one came out, because I was like, oh yeah, James Gunn, he's a trauma guy. I'm sure that this is going to be a lot of fun, a lot of really good dark humor. And there is a lot of good dark humor. And there's a lot of really good humor and some good superhero stuff, and some really funny stuff happening. Shut up, crime. What a great catchphrase for a superhero and a black comedy. The problem is that a lot of the great humor and a lot of the great references and a lot of the great stuff is undercut by a lot of attempts to be edgy. And we know that was kind of his thing for a long time. He got in trouble for those tweets back when he was still making the Guardians movies, got him fired from Disney. I never thought he should have been fired for Disney for them, because it was just some edgy jokes. It wasn't anything necessarily about his character. But you can see that on full display here. It feels like there's a lot of edginess, a lot of edgy stuff that does not serve the story. It does not serve the film. It really kind of undercuts the film itself. And if you've seen it, you kind of know. I'm sure you know kind of the stuff that I'm talking about. But there's some great jokes that almost immediately get undercut by something edgy or hateful or mean-spirited, and it just kind of makes the movie not work super great for me. I'm sure there's a lot of people who really like it. It just does not work very well for me. I think Rainn Wilson was the absolute right choice for this character. I think he's incredible. Elliot Page as Bolty was great. He can be a little bit annoying sometimes, but I think that is the purpose. So I think that that he completely nailed that part of the film. Kevin Bacon is really good. I now see why he was chosen for one of James Gunn's best superhero movies, the Guardians of the Galaxy Holiday Special. I love that because James Gunn used to be married to Jenna Fisher, who played Pam on The Office, and they were already divorced by this point, but they're still good friends. And I love that the only reason Rainn Wilson was cast in this movie was because Jenna Fisher, after they were divorced, was like, "You should cast Rainn. I think he'd be great for this." And then that's why he was cast in this movie. And he was perfect for that role, despite my issues with this film. But I'm going to move on from this. I think I've talked even longer than I wanted to about it. But I'm going to move on to my last film, which was 1951's Superman and the Mole Men. Superhero here is Superman / Clark Kent. This one could be called Superman versus Xenophobia, because that's basically the whole premise. These mole men, like this drill site, this oil site, boasts having having drilled furthest into the earth. It's on the sign when you enter the town. They've gone down 6 miles, and once they got down that far, suddenly they weren't getting anything. It was almost like they had poked through to the other side, and it turned out they had, because these mole men come up from under the ground after that, and the town is terrified of them, just wants to kill them. And Superman, who happens to already be there for a report as Clark Kent, has to protect these mole men from the citizens, which is very interesting, because that's kind of, not only is that a reversal of what normally is. Normally Clark Kent has to protect citizens from this otherworldly alien entity or whatever threat, but it's the other way. He's having to protect the alien creatures, and they're from inside the earth, so they're not technically aliens, I think, but they are alien to these people. He's having to protect them from the townspeople, and it makes for a very interesting dynamic. It's old. They have to use a lot of old school visual tricks. There's one point where it definitely goes animated, but only for like one frame. Like, I say one frame, it's more than one frame. It's like 1 second. Enough that you can't really, short enough that you can't really analyze it, but enough that you're like, okay, that did feel a little bit different. It's a movie that I absolutely love. This was not a first time watch. This is a rewatch. I actually own this movie. And it's one that I find myself enjoying every time I watch it. It's not as action packed. It's not as exciting as some of the stuff. It's not as well. It's not as tightly knit or maybe even engaging as some of the other superhero movies that have come after it. But there's such a charm to it, and the messaging is so good in it. And if you like, if you've ever watched some of those old school Superman things, that old school the show, or some of that old school stuff, the serials, there is a charm to them that that can't that it's difficult to match. I think superhero movies today can't really match the charm because they're not going for the charm, in the same way. I mean, there are charming characters and stuff like that, but there's an old school charm to them that really sets some of these old things apart. And this is one that does that. George Reeves plays Superman, which I always love the fact that George Reeves played Superman and then Christopher Reeve played Superman. That's just always really a fun coincidence, I guess. They both played the character pretty perfectly. And then Brandon Routh, who looks a lot like Christopher Reeves, played Superman, and he played the character very perfectly. A lot of people don't like that movie, but I do. Superman Returns. But so this movie, I think, is worth watching. It's only about an hour long. I think that if you've never seen it, it's worth seeing kind of what a superhero should be, because that's really one of the best things about it. It doesn't get bogged down in being edgy or trying to be gritty or trying to tell a thrilling story that you get from superhero movies that come after this. It's just a movie showing Superman as Superman should be. And I think that if you want to know about the character of Superman, you should watch Superman and the Mole Men. But that's it. That's the end of the superhero movies that I wanted to talk about. Let's talk about next week. Next week, I'm staying on the comic book train, but I'm getting the superheroes out of there, because week 21 is non-superhero comic book movies. I'm very excited about this because there's a lot of really great non-superhero comic book movies that I really love, and I'm excited to get to revisit them. I know there are a couple that I haven't seen that I'm excited to discover. Talk to me in the comments. What are some of your favorite superhero movies? First of all, what are some superhero movies that you absolutely love? Some of your favorites. Talk to me about the ones that I watched and how you feel about them. Do you feel differently? Do you feel the same? Just let me know how you feel about those. And also talk to me about some non-comic book or non-superhero comic book movies. So yeah, talk to me in the comments. Thanks.